Okay, we're going to talk about the calculation of doses and how you go about that, and some of the things you need to remember in pharmacy. Subjects we're going to talk about are going to be based around dose and dosage regimen and what those terms mean. We need you to know the difference between a dose and a strength of a drug. And we'll talk a little bit about how different formulations involve different calculations. So let's talk about the different ways in which doses might be expressed. So you might have, for example, a single dose. And this would be maybe take one tablet and it might be take one tablet 3 times a day, but one of those 3 in the day is called a single dose. And if you had that 3 times a day, you'd have 3 single doses in the day. And that's distinctly different from a single daily dose where you would take all of the drug at the same time in one single daily dose. So important to distinguish between the two of those. And they may be different because drugs have what we call a different half-life, and each drug has its own amount of time that it takes to, if you like, wear off in the body. That's a bit simplistic, but that's really what it means. So if you've got a tablet that lasts about half a day, then in order to keep your blood levels correct, you would probably take that tablet twice a day. So let's get clear about what a single dose and a single daily dose is. A daily divided dose is where sometimes a drug will be expressed as, for example, 150 milligrams of drug in daily divided doses. And it might specify that it has to be 3 divided doses, in which case for 150 milligrams, you'd have 3 doses of 50 milligrams. And that's a daily divided dose. A weekly dose would generally be given at the same time each week, same day and same time each week. And it's really important that you don't get caught out. There are not many drugs are given weekly, but when they are, it's really important that you notice that as a pharmacist. So what is a dosage regimen? Well, a dosage regimen really says it describes how those doses are fitted in, how they're scheduled. So the dosage regimen for an antibiotic might be 1 capsule three times a day, and that will be the regimen. Okay, let's talk a little bit about formulations. And you will have in pharmaceutics, you will have slightly different take on this, but you may already know, or you certainly will do very shortly, that drugs can come in all sorts of forms. So they might be solid tablets, solid capsules. They might come as a liquid, they might come as an injection. They may come as a suppository or a pessary. So there's a number of ways in which drugs can be formulated. And the reason it's important to clarify that is because many drugs have different requirements for different doses for different routes of administration. So it's very important that you know what the route of administration is going to be. Typically in community, as you probably are aware, most doses are either tablets or capsules or liquid, as they're the most convenient way of taking drugs. We talk a little bit about dose units now. So by a dose unit, we mean a solid dose formulation, either a tablet or a capsule. And usually calculations based around dose units are quite straightforward. It's a number of tablets. So let's say you were taking 4 tablets, 1 tablet 4 times a day for 7 days. Then it's simply 7 times 4, which gives you 28 tablets. So quite straightforward. It is important to note, however, that the prescription is written in that way. There may be instances when a weight of a drug is given instead of the actual number of tablets. So, for example, if we had a prescription for domperidone, 20 milligrams 3 times a day, domperidone comes in 10 milligram tablets. So to get a 20 milligram dose, we need to take 2 tablets. So that dose actually means 2 tablets 3 times a day. So always be aware of those calculations. Always be aware of being caught out by looking at the wrong units, as it were. Okay, in medicine there are some abbreviations, and these are quite, once you kind of get it, these are quite straightforward. So 1/7 is 1 day, and the reason it's over 7 is because there's 7 days in a week. Okay, so 2/7 is 2 days. 1/52, obviously there are 52 weeks in a year, so therefore that is a week. So for 1 week would be 1/52. And 1/12, obviously 12 months in a year, so therefore anything over 12, that's the number of months that you would take the medication for. There's not really a way around this. It's important that you know these abbreviations. So this is something to learn, but it's pretty straightforward once you start to think about it. Okay, so whenever you're checking doses, using the BNF is really important. And we've said before about getting familiar with the BNF. So make sure you spend some time, probably at least once a week, looking at various sections of the BNF so you become familiar with it. I put in here about renal impairment. That's impairment of the kidneys, so the kidneys aren't working as well. And the reason that's particularly important is because of what we call clearance. Clearance is where the drug is excreted from the body. So getting rid of the drug from the body. And clearly, if clearance is reduced and not as much drug is being got rid of from the body, then you're likely to get a build-up of the drug, and you may get toxic effects from it. It's a particular problem in some elderly people, but if there are kidney problems, then it's also important. You will come across this concept a lot more. I just wanted to introduce it very briefly here in terms of dosing, because you may have to adjust the dose down if the clearance is poor. Okay, so most drugs are expressed in either milligrams or grams or micrograms, but some products don't follow that and can be expressed in terms of units or active units. So things like insulin and vitamins may well be described as active units. So IU is an international unit. So you just need to be aware of that at the moment. They are slightly different. So that's been a brief run through, and what we covered in the last few brief presentations, we've talked about dilutions, what they mean, and how to use that knowledge to calculate the amount of drug needed. We've talked about what formulae are, how it's important to check what you do, and particularly the idea of the meaning of parts in and parts two. And if you're really not sure about that, go back and have another look. And finally, we talked about the calculation of doses, etc. Remember that all this information is in the book under the relevant chapters. So you need to be very familiar with these. You don't need to be kind of trying to remember what this is all about. Make sure you know this pretty well. Inspirational character is Wilma Rudolph, who had polio as a child, for a while couldn't walk, and actually won 4 gold medals for the USA. First African American woman to do so, 1960 Olympics. So fantastic inspiration.